everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and here's my review for the Episode 5, Part 5, whatever you want to call it, of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series on Disney+. I'll admit, it started strong, but then the last few episodes, it started to dip for me, only because it felt like they were kind of just resetting back to previous plot points they had been to in the first two episodes. But this episode, I feel like we're really finally getting to the meat of the series. I think this was definitely a jump up from the past two episodes. I liked episode 3 because of that climactic Darth Vader Obi-Wan battle, but I was wondering where else are they going to go with the story, and I think this episode answered a lot of questions. It's hard to do any of this without spoilers, so I'm just putting a whole blanket spoiler warning on this whole thing, but I really do think this episode really dove into the characters themselves and really fleshed out a lot of those plot holes that we were kind of missing earlier on. Why does Riva know that Anakin is Darth Vader? Well, we had it answered for us today. Just little details like that some people had been just like totally diving into and trying to dissect. I think we all have to remember that this is a series, that answers will probably be coming if we have questions for them early on. Some questions may never be answered, and that's kind of unfulfilling, but we have one more episode after this, so even if there are plot holes presented in this very episode, because this episode answered previous plot holes, I'm kind of hoping that the finale will kind of tie up some loose ends to where we can look back at the series and enjoy it more as a whole, rather than episode by episode. Of course, like I said, there are some plot holes that do arise because of the answering of some previous plot holes, especially with Riva's character in general. Like I said last week, I really love what Moses Ingram is doing with this character, and I love that conversation between her and Obi-Wan kind of through the wall. It was a very intimate conversation, but the emotions that they played in those scenes were just so good. But it does raise a lot of questions. You know, she has spent this last few years, it seems, being an inquisitor, you know, committing to these harmful acts when her main goal is to get back at Darth Vader for committing harmful acts on her and all the other younglings. It is very hard to watch, and I'm glad they put a little warning before the episode, just given recent events. I do think the creators, when they were making the sequences about Order 66 and the Jedi Temple and all the children in peril, I hope they had a little bit of consciousness in the back of their mind of what is going on in America so much today, that they didn't make it too brutal, but even just including those scenes, it is a little tough to watch. And I don't blame people for kind of wanting to write off the series for those reasons, because I do think it's hard for any audience member to watch those, whether it be this year or years past. I mean, this has been happening for so long, these terrible events and school shootings and all that, so I definitely didn't love those scenes, but I do think it definitely added to Riva's backstory. It made her a more fleshed out character. I know that was a complaint that a lot of people had, but this just gives so much complexity, and even though I kind of saw it coming that she was a youngling, I said it in the last episode, not knowing that it was potentially a spoiler, it was just speculation, but I do think her character arc is becoming more fulfilling because of these moments and these gaps they're putting in. This episode really, though, was a Vader episode. This was so much centered around Vader and his characters. We get these amazing flashbacks, finally seeing Hayden Christensen do some acting and speaking outside of the Darth Vader mask. It was really nice to see him back in this role, because you can tell that he's been itching to redeem himself. Not that his performance was bad, but I think a lot of the material he was given didn't suit his strengths, and he was just given what he was given. I think he is a solid actor. If you've seen Shattered Glass, you know he has the chops, and I don't think this episode necessarily showed too much of that, because he didn't have so much to do, but he had enough to do where it was nice to see him and Ewan McGregor back in these roles. It's like we hadn't missed a beat, but those scenes were really nice, and I think it's interesting because a lot of people are thinking that these are flashbacks that serve Obi-Wan and Riva's point of views, but I really think these are just as much Anakin's flashbacks. I do think you can look at it at a lens where these are the flashbacks that Vader is seeing in these moments, maybe also Obi-Wan and Riva seeing these as well, but I really do think these flashbacks are more of Vader's flashbacks. You know, we see in this episode particularly how calculated Vader really is, how he can see things coming from 4 or 5 steps ahead. It's really interesting in these fights to see Vader just so stone cold and calculated, seeing every single move almost like it's a game of chess, and I think a lot of that has to harken back to that fight with Obi-Wan, and to just see that dynamic and kind of see him slipping slowly, gradually into the dark side Anakin that we saw at the peak in Revenge of the Sith. I think the flashback between Obi-Wan and Anakin really did serve this episode well, because we did see a lot from Obi-Wan as well, just reflecting on the past and just still kind of struggling with this trauma in real time. and just all the revelations that come throughout the episode for him. But I really did love Vader. I loved, of course, the physicality, again, that Hayden brings to the Vader suit. James Earl Jones doing a great job. But this Riva square-off was really, really cool. This whole series going into it, everyone was like, it's going to be an Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader thing, but it really turned out to be Riva versus Darth Vader. You know, this was her whole plan all along. It seemed like it really met a pretty solid climax with that fight. I thought the fight was pretty good. I mean, I don't really love all the cinematography and lighting choices in some of these scenes, especially in this like darker cave area. It was a little harder to see some things, but I do love just the actual use of the lightsaber, you know, kind of splitting it in half and using it as a propeller, and then Vader having two lightsabers. But this brings up a big question, because Riva does get stabbed in the stomach, or so it appears, but does not die, and Vader leaves her to die. And I know some people have been complaining about, you know, why isn't Vader just killing all these people? I mean, he's a raging terror machine. He's a raging terror machine in Rogue One. He is in the original trilogy, but this is still a little bit of time before Rogue One. And yes, we saw him do that with the younglings, but there's a part of me that has to believe that maybe they're trying just their slightest to give us a little bit of that redemption that we're going to see later in Return of the Jedi way in the future. Maybe they're giving us those little inklings that maybe there is still a tiny bit of human still in Vader. I know there's this whole concept of, you know, changing the continuity of the series and, you know, no, Vader killed Anakin completely. Vader is Vader, Anakin is Anakin. I get that. But also, I do think, you know, in those moments when he's about to kill Riva, and, you know, there's that flashback to the Jedi Temple. Like I said, I think it's Anakin's flashback more so than Riva's. And, you know, I could be reading into it too much, but I have to believe that because we get a redeemed Vader in Return of the Jedi, I think going back and doing series like this that take place before, I think it's nice that they add a little bit of humanity in there, because one-note villains, I'm not a fan of them. I like when there's more fleshing out for these villains, and I think that's why I do like the prequels, because the character of Anakin is fleshed out. There is a lot of ups and downs with his character, and I do like how we get a little bit of that with Vader, that he doesn't necessarily kill everyone and everything. In Rogue One, he does, because that's some time into the future, and we still don't know what's happening in this next last finale episode that may even indicate his behavior in Rogue One. But right now, where we're at with Vader, he's still a little bit fresh in the suit. He's only about 10 years into this, and maybe there is a little bit of humanity in there. So I do think the choice to leave Riva alive, yes, it has to happen because they want Riva in the finale. I get that from a creative standpoint, but just in terms of a character standpoint, it did feel like maybe the Anakin side of him that's really deep, deep, deep down in there wanted to spare her because there was some good in him. I don't know. But it does bring up an interesting question, and once again, we still have not seen this guy. We still have not seen Qui-Gon Jinn. I assume he'll be coming in the finale because they kept teasing it in the first two episodes. We haven't heard Obi-Wan calling out to Qui-Gon much in the last few, but I have to assume it's right around the corner. But the question becomes, the Grand Inquisitor and now this new Grand Inquisitor, Riva, have both been stabbed and survived their wounds. Yet Qui-Gon died pretty quickly after getting stabbed by Darth Maul. So my question is, does it have to do with the lightsaber? Does it have to do with the age of the person? Is Qui-Gon a little older and that's why it hit him more fatally? Or does it have to just do with, you know, throwing continuity out of the window and just having to just trust what the creators put in front of us? I don't know. If anyone has the answer, I would love to know. The problem is a lot of people have been telling me, oh, it's because the Grand Inquisitor had two stomachs and only one of his stomachs was stabbed. Like, that could be true, but if they don't address it in the series, it brings all the questions up. So I do wish they maybe addressed how he survived. Maybe they will. And again, that's the thing. I don't want to jump to conclusions because this is a series. We still have one more episode left. But it was just a little questionable. Like, these two survived so easily, and Qui-Gon died. And it was very sad. And, you know, I'm wondering, why didn't we get more Qui-Gon then if we can get more of these characters that get stabbed? These stab wounds, it seems like once you get stabbed by a lightsaber, that's it. Darth Maul, a little bit of a different scenario because of, you know, what everything was explained in the Clone Wars and all that. But yeah, just an interesting question that I had, and maybe we'll get it answered next week, maybe we won't. So I think this episode sets up a lot. I like how it was so action-packed, but it dove really into the characters. We got a lot of great stuff with Leia, trying to show just how smart and brilliant she is for her age. We got some great moments from Obi-Wan, but this was really a big Riva and Vader episode, and I think they really did a good job bringing their characters full circle with what we've kind of seen before and what we were kind of expecting going in. I don't really have many questions for the finale because I'm kind of going in open-minded. I think this show has kind of surprised us in delivering some fights we thought would come later, earlier, circling around a certain story beat. So I'm going to stay open-minded because some episodes have really worked for me, some haven't. But this one I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping that this is good news for a good finale. But even if it's not, I think there are moments in this series that I'm going to be able to pluck out and enjoy on their own. I know there are people that just aren't liking the series, and that's fine. You know, not everyone has to like everything. But I'm enjoying it, and I can't wait to see what happens next. So that was my review of Obi-Wan Episode 5, Part 5. Please, if you like this video, like it. Go ahead and like it down below. It helps more people see these videos, especially because of a busy schedule. I have to post this a little later in the day when so many people have already posted their reviews, but I'm trying to get mine out as quick as possible, especially with this next finale next week. I'm going to really try to deliver that pretty early, but thank you guys so much. Please subscribe also if you want to see more videos on the channel. We got some great stuff coming up, including a Star Wars episode of Picture This, where we're going back to the year 1977 and looking at all the Best Picture nominees and the winner, Annie Hall, of that year, Star Wars, amongst one of those 5 nominees. So we will be talking about that, as well as some other really great episodes. We're doing a Tom Hanks draft day in preparation for the new release Elvis. We are doing a frame rack episode for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in honor of Pride Month. And there will be also reviews coming for stuff like Lightyear, stuff like Elvis, as the weeks trickle on. So thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned. I'll see you next time.